opportunity to experience more of the Holy Spirit.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's a good day to be in church. I love it. It's a great day because winter's on its way out, and I'm so excited. And hopefully the flu season goes with it and all that other fun stuff that people have been sick and hanging around. But I love what God is doing. I will say, I'll just pause here just for a second. One of the times when I come out while announcements are still going and the lights are off on me, but I just like looking at it going, ooh, I know that. Ooh, look at all these good-looking people. You're good-looking people. You're a good-looking bunch. I love you guys. I am so grateful that we get to do this together. I love what God is doing here at Radiant Church. We have a team right today that's in Honduras. It's they're there working with our one child Hope Centers, and excited to see what God's going to continue to do through them and work through them. And Friday night we had a baptism service for our kids and families, and God's just doing some really great things. Can't wait for baptism next week. Already so many people that God is doing something powerful in our lives. And I really believe that this next year, we've been talking about how 2025 is a year where we feel like God's called us to invest in the next. Whatever's our next step in the journey, that 2025 would be very much a year where intentionally taking those next steps on our spiritual journey. That this time next year, we would look back and go, I'm a completely different person than I was before. I definitely didn't go on repeat this last year. There were some things that happened. And I love how God is doing that. Like he's calling us to create a movement of people all throughout Eastern Iowa that are just living radiant lives, that are living a life in Jesus, that people go, oh, that's something different. There's something unique about how you're living your life and the way that you approach life. And with that, having 500 people that are really making that commitment to learn how to be disciples who make disciples. And that we started that conversation last week. And if you weren't with us, I really highly encourage you to go online and to listen to last week's message, because it's just a really, I think, a great starting point to understand where we're going, to understand the framework of what God's called us to do. We looked at Matthew chapter 4, verse 19, where Jesus said, hey, I want you to come follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people. Jesus, when he invites his followers to be with him, he doesn't call us to become Christians. All right, we looked at how in the Bible it actually says over 268 times he says, come be a follower of me, come be a disciple of me, somebody who is with me, not learning about a book, not learning about other things, but to learn about the master. In fact, we said maybe a better term for our culture might be apprentice. That's kind of being, a lot of people using that over disciple because it means the same thing. But apprenticeship, we defined it this way, that apprenticeship is a transformative journey of being immersed in the master. It's this transformative journey of being immersed in Jesus. That's what Jesus is calling us to. Jesus was so different than any other rabbi in his day because he didn't come and teach them, well, let me teach you all the things about the Bible. Let me teach you about the Torah and the Mishnah. Jesus said, no, I want to teach you about me. I want to teach you about me, about my life. He didn't come to tell us about how to live. He came to give us his life. He is the resurrection, the way, the truth, and the life. And that if we follow him, we'll go on this transformative journey with him to learn how to capture the souls of humanity. I love what Francis Chan, we said this last week, discipleship is not about becoming a good person. It's about becoming like Jesus. And when we looked at what marked somebody who was a follower of Jesus, we noticed some specific things. Followers of Jesus spent time with Jesus. And they spent a lot of time with Jesus. They were wrecked by Jesus. They were like, well, my life is totally turned upside down. I can't see life the way other people see life now because I've been wrecked by Jesus. They are joyfully satisfied in Jesus. There's something so good and rich about being with Jesus. Their life is just completely and joyfully satisfied in him. And so because they wanted to be like him, they wanted to do the things that Jesus did, and they wanted to make disciples to follow the commandment that Jesus made. That was what we looked at last week. And kind of like what I said last week, I want to encourage you. We're going to have notes available for every series. And again, this week, encourage you to grab the notes. If you didn't grab it on your way in, make sure you grab them on the way out, because the reflection questions and some resources that are going to be here for us as we really lean into this, right? To understand that, because the next several weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to go this really practical, in-depth look of what it means to do the things that Jesus did. So what were the things that Jesus did, and how do we do them as somebody who is a follower of Jesus? But here's the part that's so important that we got to make sure we understand. We're not just going to learn how to do more things. That's not the goal. Our goal is not to learn how to do more things. We want to learn to be like Jesus so we can be transformed by Jesus. Or to be a follower of Jesus, to be an apprentice of Jesus is not about doing enough good things. And I want to make sure that we pause here in the beginning and we really solidify that, because we can get off track. Jesus simply said, follow me. And there's two requirements to follow him. You need to repent. You need to say, I cannot do this on my own. And you need to believe. You need to have faith that Jesus is the one who is the source of life that you can follow, that you can have a part of, that you can be wrecked by him. Like, where else are we going to go? You hear me almost every week. We end the service with a call to follow Jesus. Is as simple as ABC. It's as simple as admit, believe, confess. That's what the Bible says. It's that easy to follow Jesus, that we admit, my life is marked by sin. I can't make life happen on my own. I believe Jesus is the source of life and that he died on the cross and rose again, defeated death, hell, and the grave because he was going to remove any barrier to be with me. And I'm going to confess that Jesus is Lord. He's the one above all things. And I'm going to choose to be with him. It's that simple, right? Following Jesus isn't about doing things. Following Jesus is about what Jesus has done for us. That's so important that we understand, that we get this, right? That's all we need to do. So when we look at the things that Jesus did, what we're not doing is looking at a list of do's and don'ts, right? Because that is what we call moralism and legalism. Moralism and legalism are, here's the things that you need to do to be a good person. Here's the things that if you don't click these boxes, you're not a good person. You're not following Jesus. If you're outside of this, you're outside of him. And those are the two things that Jesus spoke against more than anything else. Jesus continually spoke against moralism and legalism. Because if moralism and legalism could save you, Jesus didn't need to die. He didn't need to die because your willpower, your ability to be good and to do good things, your willpower would be enough to save you. We can't save ourselves. There's nothing we can do to save ourselves. Those things are not able to save us, right? All that's required is we repent and we believe. And now we become an apprentice of Jesus. We follow Jesus. We want to be like him because the more we're with him, the more we're joyfully satisfied in him. The more we're with him, the more he wrecks us. We're not good for anything else. The more we're with him, we just find our place in him, and we just want to do what he did so we can be like him. How I want to be like him. To do what Jesus did is not what you're required to do, but it's how we're going to learn to grow the fruit that Jesus grew. How to produce life the way that Jesus produced life. Right? The good news of Jesus is that when you receive it through faith, he produces life through you the way that he produced life. He gives life away. He multiplies it. Maybe think of it this way. Before you come to Jesus, you and I were simply a weed. That's all we are. We're a weed. And we can reproduce as a weed, and weeds reproduce a lot. Right? We can do a lot of things and fill up a lot of space. But when you come to Jesus, he doesn't want to just change you from being a weed. He wants you to become an orange tree. It's a complete transformation. All you can produce as a weed are seeds and pollen, but Jesus wants you to produce life-giving fruit. And he wants it to grow deep in your lives, and he wants to give it away. And so over the next several weeks, what we're going to try to do is we're going to work to strip away the veneer of American Christianity. All right, and we all know what veneer is. Veneer is like what's on this little table next to me. It looks like wood, but it doesn't take much to put a little nick in it and realize there's no life-giving substance there whatsoever. It's just chopped up dead things glued together, right? It's that the veneer of American Christianity is something that looks like it's real, but it's just really moralism and legalism. It doesn't produce Jesus's life in us. And what we want to do is look at what Jesus did and try to learn why he did those things. What's the why behind those things, right? Because you and I are going to want to do what he did because we want him above everything else. We just want to be with him. And what happens is we learn to lay down our lives, lay down our desires, lay down our wants, because his life is so much better than ours. And we're gonna have to fight the urge over the next couple of weeks to go, I heard this before. Oh, I've heard that before. I've heard, because remember, American Christianity sounds a lot like Christianity. But Jesus wants us to produce something life-giving in us. And we're like, oh, I've tried that before. It didn't work. I've tried to do those things before. It didn't work. Instead, we're going to really wrestle with what's the why behind what Jesus is saying. And this first week's going to probably be as hard as any of them to not go, heard that before, tried that before. Thanks, Pastor. That was sweet. And we'll just set it aside and move on to our life. But if we don't get this is the key to unlocking the rest of the journey. This is so important to unlock the rest of the journey. So when we look at Jesus' life, one of the things we'll notice right away is Jesus did a lot of things different than all the other rabbis. Jesus did things that messed up his followers continually. His followers were always going, why are you doing this? What are you doing? And it starts right away in Mark chapter 1, verse 35. Before daybreak the next morning, Jesus got up and went out to an isolated place to pray. Later, Simon and the others went to find him. And when they found him, they said, hey, everyone's looking for you. If you read right before that, Jesus was healing people and people were coming and he was doing miracles and he was teaching and there were crowds looking for people and people were traveling from all over to find Jesus. Like there were a lot of really good things happening. They're like, Jesus, people want you. There's good things that are happening. And Jesus replies, well, it's time for us to go to another town and I'll preach to them too. That's why I came. And his disciples are like, wait a minute, you're healing people. There's demands, there are unmet needs, there are good things happening here. We got to be a part of all these good things. Look at all these good things that are taking place. Look at all these demands on our lives. Jesus, you are needed. Hurry up. Why did you disappear? There's these people waiting in line to be with you. They want to know you. They want to find you. We can't miss out. But what does Jesus do instead? Jesus responds to the pressures and demands of life by intentionally walking slowly into the next step of his journey. The way he responded to pressure and demands is he just kept walking in the direction he needed. Jesus lived with intentional margin. There was intentional margin in Jesus' life. He never allowed the demands of life to cause him to hurry. This is why Dallas Willard, one of his more famous little quotes about following Jesus, he says, hurry is the great enemy of the spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. Right? If this is a value to Jesus, this must be a value to us, and there must be a necessity to it. If we're going to follow him, we must follow him like he did. And to follow Jesus, we're going to need to learn to have intentional margin in our lives like Jesus did, because we need margin in order for fruit to grow. Fruit just doesn't grow immediately. There needs space for it to grow, for you to become from a weed to an orange tree, right? When we're defining margin as simply this, margin is just space to thrive. You and I in our lives, we need space to thrive. I remember several years ago, I went to there's a lecture series by Dr. Richard Swenson. He was going around, wrote a book, and one of his books was called Margin. And as part of the lecture series, he said, so too many of us, it's kind of like if you were given a document like this, right, where you can kind of see where it's just no space, tight all the way to the edge, and page after page after page of incredible content, but there's just no margin. And no matter how much you think the content might be good, none of us are going to want to read this. But the problem is this is how most of us live our lives, right? Most of us live our lives filled to every edge. Every second, every moment is just filled to the edge. We don't have any margin in our lives. But the creator of the universe came and modeled the perfect human life, and he modeled margin. He modeled space. He went away. He disappeared. He was the most perfect life, and he had space to thrive. The enemy knows this. Corrie ten Boom puts it this way: if the devil cannot make us bad, he will make us busy. You've heard me say many times over the years, busy is a distancing word. Like I've tried to ruthlessly eliminate the word busy from my life because as soon as somebody says to me, hey, I know you're really busy, instantly what you hear is, I'm sorry, there's not enough space in my life for me. I know that right now. I'm like, I never wanted someone to feel like I'm too busy for next relationship. Yeah, life has my full attention, but it doesn't mean I'm busy, right? Because busy pushes us away and especially pushes us away from Jesus. Now, the Bible talks in Psalms 127 too. It's useless for you to work so hard from early to morning until late at night, anxiously working, for God gives rest to his loved ones. Now, if I wanted to today, what I could do is I could spend the next 20 minutes and walk you through a whole bunch of arguments, really from a secular perspective. I could walk you through psychologists for today. I could walk you through great leaders in the Stoic movement. There's leaders in business, leaders in people that write on leadership. And I could walk you through all the important things on why you need margin and the danger of busyness. In fact, I got a little thing on the screen, right? That I could talk about the increase of stress. That the more that you're busy, you're gonna have stress and you're gonna end up like I did a couple of years ago in the ER thinking you have a heart attack, but you're just stressed out. You're just overwhelmed and just stressed. And even in Ecclesiastes 4:8 it says people are never satisfied with what they own and they never stop working to get more. What a senseless and miserable life. Right? We could talk about how when we have margin, we can sleep better. And could tell you study after study about how important sleep is in your life and how even in the Bible says God wants to give those who he loves rest. And that if the busier you are, it's going to decrease your joy. And it's going to rob you of joy. In fact, Job even put it this way, one of the oldest writings we have in the Bible, my days go faster than a runner. They fly away without me seeing any joy. Like days just go by and you're like, where'd the time go? Where'd January go? It's gone already. You know, and where's the joy in the moment? Whereas God wants us to increase gratitude and contentment. All right, we could talk about how busyness stunts relationships and how margin helps relationships deepen. That's why so many people struggle with relationships at church, because we don't have the time or the space to just sit with people. Because relationships take time, they take effort, they take space to create. We could talk about limiting your product. Like the busier you are, the less you actually get done. But if you have margin and space, you have purpose and value and you do the right things better. I could talk about all those things and put a really great talk together, but that has nothing to do with what Jesus is talking about when it comes to margin. That's not what Jesus is talking about. We got to look at why is Jesus saying these things? Why is Jesus helping us understand that living with margin is so important? And one of them we have to make sure that we understand is that there are no accidental apprentices. Apprenticeship doesn't happen accidentally. It takes time. It takes intentionality. Jesus wants to plant life in you, and he wants that life to produce life, and he wants that life, that fruit to grow in you and be given out to other people, those that want to live radiant lives. There needs to be intentional space for you to produce the life of Jesus. Because not only did Jesus model this, but he taught it. He taught it. And in fact, if you look at John chapter 15, we could spend 2 weeks just on that chapter alone. Easy. And we're just going to look at one verse of it just to help us understand. This is what Jesus is getting at. When Jesus is talking about having intentional margin in your life, this is what he's referring to. Because he wants fruit to grow. And if you don't grow fruit, he's going to cut you off. He wants you to have that fruit growing. And he says it this way in verse 4. Remain or abide in me, depending on how you translate it, and I will remain, abide in you. For a branch cannot produce fruit if it's severed from the vine, and you cannot be fruitful unless you remain in me. 10 times just in these couple verses, Jesus uses that word meno, remain, abide. And maybe even the richer meaning of the word is it's live with. Abide, where do you live? Where do you plant yourself? Where do you call home? Where is home for you? When life is at its fullest, what is your reset location? I want maybe think of it this way. Where is your emotional home? When you're really busy and you're running all over the place, when you reset, what is the place you're drawn to? When it's home for so many of us, it's like, well, we're going to turn on the TV, or I'm exhausted, boom, I'm going to do that. Or I'm going to start scrolling, or I'm going to start cleaning, or I'm going to pick up my hobby and my projects, and I'm going to do something because I can't just sit and be. And what Jesus is saying is, I want your reset, your emotional home, to be with me. I want that to be with me, in my presence. Right? That the most beautiful place to be is with Jesus. That's the most beautiful place. Like during the coming weeks, one of the things that we're going to do, we're going to help unpack this model, and it's a model that I think is helpful. And we're not going to talk a lot about it today, but I think as any models can be helpful. But if you look at the model incorrectly, we can look at it and just go, "Oh, you just want me to be busy. There's more things for me to do." And that's not what this is about. It's not about creating more things for us to do. And we're going to look at it and go, well, I've tried that before. I don't have time for this. I've tried doing this before. But what we're saying is this shouldn't require more time. This should be the reset of your emotional home. This should be where you reset and where you go to where you're finding Jesus. This apprenticeship wheel is what I like to call it. We'll unpack it, and I'll give you tools, and we're going to keep it as simple as possible, really practical each week to help us, because these aren't more things to do, but to be like Jesus, to do the things that Jesus did. It helps us to find that space where we rest in him. But if we don't have intentional margin, if we don't have a reset place in him, none of the rest of it will make sense. It'll just feel like busyness. It'll just feel like moralism and legalism and things to do. And we're going to fight that with everything that's within us. Right? American Christianity is drawing us back to be moral, do more good things, earn God's attention. But Jesus is saying, no, I want you to come on a transformative journey immersed in me. He put it this way in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens. I'll give you rest. Do you feel that way about life? Jesus like, just come follow me. Take my yoke upon you. Remember we said last week, yoke in that day was a rabbi's teaching about how life was to be lived out. Jesus said, take my yoke, my teaching. Let me teach you about it, because I am humble and gentle at heart. Like the core of who he is going to take care of you, and you will find rest for your souls. Because my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. When we immerse ourselves in Jesus, it is life-giving, and it is home. He becomes our home. He becomes our reset. This is why we say a lot, following Jesus is hard or simple, right? Being a follower of Jesus, like it's pretty easy just to, because it's already been done for us, right? That part's simple. But to really follow him, to be a disciple, that's hard. Because what I got to do is I got to say no to a lot of things that I want to do in my life so I can be more like him. I got to put to aside those things that might be good things. They might be life-giving things. They might be, Jesus, look at all the healing. Jesus, look at all the people that need to be with you. They might be good things. But maybe we have to be willing to say no to good things so we can embrace what's best for our souls. John Mark Comer wrote a book very similar to the series that we're going through called Practicing the Way. And as he was developing it, he said he met with a psychologist who was talking through the principles. He's like, oh, I love it, but John, you're just going to have a real struggle with people when it comes to time. Because he put it this way, he says, most people are just too busy to live emotionally healthy and spiritually vibrant lives. In Peter Scazzaro, in his book, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, another amazing books on the recommended list for this week. John Mark's was on last week's. And, he talks about how if we want to live emotionally healthy, spiritually vibrant lives, we need margin. We got to find healing and wholeness in our souls, our very being, because when your emotions are out of whack, right, the depth of who you are, where your emotions and your spirit kind of connect, it's hard to divide that, right? But those areas in our lives, when your emotions are out of whack, your spiritual vibrancy is dimmed. You're going to have a hard time being spiritually vibrant, because what happens for so many of us, we just say yes to so many life-sucking things. We just say yes to a lot of things that just don't give us life. That's why to Titus, Paul wrote, "For the grace of God has appeared that offers salvation to all people, and it teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in the present age." Jesus wants to help you make your emotional, life-giving place of reset your abiding place with him. Jeremiah puts it this way. He says, slow down, take a deep breath. What's the hurry? Why are you wearing yourself out? Just what are you after anyway? But you say, I can't help it. I'm addicted to alien gods and I can't quit. How many of us are addicted to scrolling, watching, being busy, not sitting inside, like we got to do something. There's something, like we're so addicted to these alien gods that we just can't quit. And what Jesus is saying, I want you to be addicted to me. Be addicted to Jesus, that he's your reset. He's your abiding place. He's your home. Right? If we're going to be like Jesus, and Jesus walked slowly and intentionally into the next step of his spiritual journey, we have to do the same. And so I just want to give you 4 really simple principles just to help you apply this to your lives. And the first is, you and I need to embrace the slow process of healthy spiritual formation. We need to embrace the slow process of healthy spiritual formation. Following Jesus is a long obedience in the same direction. It doesn't matter if you've been following Jesus for 3 weeks or 50 years. It is a process. It is something it takes space and it takes time for the things that he wants to plant in you to grow and bear fruit. And the more you're with him, the more it works. Now, there's some immediate things, right? I love it. You've come to Jesus. There's immediate salvation. Immediately. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to work about it. There's immediate redemption. You are set for heaven. You are redeemed. That it's done. Deal. There's immediate righteousness. You and God are in a good spot. He's with you. He's going to walk with you. But he wants that continual transformation of becoming more and more like Jesus is going to happen over years. One of my favorite life verses, this has been a core life verse for me, is 2 Corinthians 3:18. And in context, and again, this is another passage we could just spend weeks on, because the depth of the application of it is just so beautiful and so rich. It says, so those of us who have had the veil removed can see and reflect the glory of the Lord. Because of what Jesus has done, right? We now can see him. It's instant. He's ripped the veil that hides us from God. We can be with God and we can look at him and gaze upon him. And the verbiage here in the Greek is like, I'm continually looking at him all of the time. And the Lord, who is the Spirit, makes us more and more like him as we are changed into his glorious image. Because of the work Jesus did on the cross, I can see him, I can be with him, I can reflect his glory. And what it's saying is the more I gaze upon him, the more I look upon him. The Greek word is actually the same root word that we get the word metamorphosis from. There is that level of transformation, change that happens in my life. The more I look at Jesus, the more I'm going from a caterpillar to a butterfly. The more I look at Jesus, the more he transforms me and he changes me and I become more like him. The more I gaze at his presence, the more I want to be like his presence, the more I want to be in him and with him, to be with Jesus, to be joyfully satisfied in him, to be wrecked by him, to abide in him, and he changes me. Habakkuk 2:3, it says the vision for the future, this vision I'm giving you is for a future time. Now it describes the end and it will be fulfilled. Now if it seems slow in coming, wait patiently, for it surely will take place. It will not be delayed. Or we all go through seasons where we feel like, I want to get there faster. I want to get there quicker. And Jesus is like, no. Journey with me. Enjoy it's a slow process of healthy spiritual formation. We tend to overestimate what can happen to us in 6 months or a year, but we totally underestimate what can happen in 3. I like to tell people that all the time. Like if you look back 3 years ago at this church compared to now, if you were to tell everybody 3 years ago where we are, you'd be like, you're nuts, you're crazy. And it wouldn't have happened in 1 year, but after 3, you're like, oh yeah, look at all the stuff that God did. So when we come to Jesus, we embrace the slow process of healthy spiritual formation. The second thing, embrace contentment in the present moment. So many of us are so driven for what's next. We want what's next. We want to be better. We want the next thing to happen, that we miss the power of the moment. Jesus knew the cross was coming. Jesus was, as soon as his ministry started, he was like flint to the cross. That's where he was going. But you notice, he never missed a moment on his journey to the cross. Didn't matter what was, if it was some guys with leprosy crying out to him, Jesus was fully present with them. If it was a woman who was pushing her way, trying to sneak her way through a crowd to grab a hold of the edge of, and he's like, oh, come here, daughter. Doesn't matter that the highest ranking official in town is his kid is sick and dying and needs the attention. Jesus is like fully present in everything that he did. He never was too far out ahead. He was always fully present in every relationship and every moment. Paul puts it this way, in a way that most of us use this passage out of context, but let's get back to the context. Philippians 4:11, for I've learned how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing or everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it's with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little. For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. And most of us pull that last line out and we're like, I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. And what do we mean by that? I can do sports. I can do a lot of stuff. I can stay busy and I won't die. What's Paul saying? I can be content. I can find life in the present. Whether it's really good stuff or really hard stuff, I can be content and fully present in the moment with Jesus. Learning to enjoy every moment, to find my rest, my emotional home in Jesus. Not just fighting the bad moments, oh, God left me, or not just getting frustrated during the boring moments, Lord, why isn't things happening quicker, but to learn to be fully present in Jesus and going, Lord, this is hard right now. I can't make it through this without you. I want to be fully present with you in the midst of this because it's your presence that the only one who's going to help me get through this. Or when you're going through a boring phase and you're just so frustrated because things aren't happening quick enough. Okay, Lord, there's something you're wanting to get my attention in the moment that I'm missing, and you're trying to get me to slow down to pay attention to something in the midst of this. Help me see it. Help me be present. Help me enjoy every moment with the people that I'm with, even though I want to be further ahead. I'm going to be present here now. Learning to be content in Jesus in all circumstances. When you're at work, be fully present. When you're with your kids, be fully present. When you're with your spouse, be fully present. When you're going through things, how much more would life be different if we learned to be fully present, being appreciative of the presence of the Lord, right? Finding our abiding place in Him, being content in that moment. Now, I'll tell you, this is a hard one for me. I'm okay that Christy is in another country right now as I'm talking about this, because she would be glaring eyes right at, because I live 3 months out. Like I have to intentionally slow myself down all the time, but I really work at it. And if you catch me in the lobby talking with somebody, like pretty rarely I'll let somebody else interrupt me if I'm talking with you. because I want to be fully present with you in that moment. I've learned there are times that when I'm working, I get distracted and I'm other places, but I'm learning how am I fully present in the now? I'm already doing the series in my head that's coming after Easter. And I'm like, wait, slow down, Brian. We're here, we're right now in this moment. Let's be fully present in this moment and allow God to work in us. But it's so important that we learn to be content. Number 3, embrace your Sabbath to set your big rocks in place. Embrace your Sabbath to set your big rocks in place. Back in October, we did a series called The Living a Life of Peace. And in that, I did a message called We Are Too Busy. And if you weren't here for that, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. And in that, I talked through Sabbath. What is the Sabbath? What's the importance of Sabbath? Not from a legalism perspective, but really from a healthy dynamic of what God wants us, why we need to have Sabbath, why we need to practice it, fully relates to what we're talking about today. We need Sabbath in our life. Exodus 23:12. You have 6 days to do your work, but every 7th day, you must stop and rest. You do this so that your animals, your house staff, and your foreign workers may be refreshed, right? Because when we think of work, our culture looks at work this way. Work, 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 crash. Work, 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 crash. Work, 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 crash, right? We rest that on the week, that's how we work. But from a biblical perspective, it's no, rest, be filled, pour out. Rest, be filled, pour out. It's a completely different framework how God looks at our lives. That we are to set aside a day a week to rest, to delight, and to regain kingdom focus in our lives. That we should, and I kind of recommend that you start, for many people, it should be maybe think about starting at Saturday night at 5 p.m., have a dinner, invite some friends over, enjoy it, right? You should delight in the time and do it with family, have some space together. There should be some sort, play games, do things that you delight in. If you have a hobby, that's a great time to do something that you just enjoy doing with others or do it by yourself, and go to bed early, get some rest, because you don't have to stay up late. And then on Sundays, we do have that part of our time is to make sure we have a kingdom focus. That's why we serve. It's why we give. It's why we remind ourselves what our kingdom time is about. And then working through, the next level. The hard part we have is American Christianity. In most of our lives, we reserve the weekends for our hobbies. Jesus isn't a hobby. He is my everything. He's my everything. And so one of the things I want to encourage you to do is use the end of your Sabbath, and maybe many of you haven't thought of this, and put your big rocks into place for the next week. You've got some space where you're thinking about Jesus, so think through your next week and go, how am I during this next week going to put time in place to make sure that I've got space to delight in Jesus? It's an old illustration. We've seen this before, and when it comes to putting our time together, right? We have our lives, and we have these important things that are in our part of our lives, and these are really life-giving things. That's why I picked coffee for that to be, because it's life-giving. It's from the Lord. He created it for us to nurture us, right? But all of us have just life. Just life happens, busy things happen, life happens, and we tend to just live life. But then we have those other things that are important things. They're just, we got to pay the bills, we got to go to events, we got all kinds of stuff, and we put those into our life. But the problem is then we try to figure out, how do I get those important things into my life after that? And I'm trying to make room to get all those important things into my life. And there always isn't, and they're like, oh, I guess I just don't have time to be able to give those things the attention that they need. That's how most of us live. But if we would learn to say, no, I want to be like on my Sabbath, maybe it's Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening, I'm going to take some time and I'm going to anchor some of the most important things, into my life. And then I'm going to put some other important things will then fill in around it. But I'm going to put the big things in place first. And once I do that, the truth is there's actually a whole lot more I can even add to it than before. I can add other things into that and make that space and have that time. And if we really want to get aggressive, we can go even add more things to there. Let me turn that off. So the remnants of the flu. And, we can make that happen. I'm making a mess up here. And then we're still going to have life, right? Life is still going to happen. And I made a whole lot of mess of this first service, but it's all right. But life is still going to happen, and you're going to still want to scroll, and you're going to still want to go watch TV, and you're going to still have those kind of things happen. But it's amazing how all of that still fits when I put the priorities in the right place. And what I want you to think about is use your Sabbath to think through your next week about how I'm creating space to abide in Jesus. And part of that is to embrace your takeoffs, your landings, and your refueling. Embrace your takeoffs, your landings, and your refueling at the start of your day, at the end of your day, at your meals. Take a moment to make Jesus your emotional home. Like when you wake up in the morning, you don't need to take a lot of time, but pause and just go, Lord, as I'm going into this day, I want to make sure that I'm settled in, that you're my reset, you're my home. I want to pray through my day and my calendar and all the things that I've got going, and I want to make sure that I put you as my reset. You is what's important. That I can be fully present in all of those things, that at the end of the day, that I take a few moments and I just pause and I go, Lord, I'm landing this day. How did I do just making my space with you? Oh, here's a bunch of junk I carried with me. I just want to hand it over to you because I don't need to carry that with me while I sleep. I don't need to have that conversation over and over again. It's not going to happen tonight. So here, Lord, it's yours. You're my place to be. When you go to work 5 minutes early. Sit in the parking lot in your car for 3 minutes. Go, Lord, as I'm about to walk into this place and I'm about to do my job today, may your presence be what's most important to me. May that be what I carry. When you go home at night, sit in your car for 3 minutes before you go into the house. Lord, I want to be fully present with the people that I do life with. And so I want to let go of the things that I was handling at work, and I'm going to let those go. And I want to be fully present in these moments. When you have a meal, man, have meals with other people. We need to do a better job of just sharing meals with other people anyway. Have meals with the family. I remember we would have kids over to our house all the time in Minneapolis, and I cannot tell you the number of times we had teenagers in our house. This is the first time I've ever sat down as a meal with a family, ever in my life. It's odd. Most people eat in front of the TV, they eat on the go, but to create some space to be fully present. Maybe put it on your calendar, just put, hey, on Wednesday, I got an extra 5 minutes. I'm gonna put an appointment with Jesus during my lunch break. I'm gonna take 5 minutes with Jesus during my lunch break, and I'm putting it in my calendar. I have to put those things in my calendar or I forget. I run right past them. But learn to do those things where you take your landings and your takeoffs and you learn and you're refueling. Ralph Waldo Emerson put it this way. I love his little quote. He says, guard well your spare moments. They're like uncut diamonds. Discard them and their value will never be known. Improve them and they will become the brightest gems in a useful life. See, Jesus, instead of responding to the pressures and demands of life, he walked slowly towards what was the next thing on his journey. That's what Jesus did. He walked slowly to the next thing on his journey. He intentionally put time. Remember, he's calling us to follow him, and there are no accidental apprentices. It takes space. It takes time with him to abide with him. You and I need space to thrive. And when we can reset our home location to create space just to gaze upon his glory, we will continue to be transformed to be more and more like him. Let's pray. Jesus, we just come together today and we thank you. Thank you that all the work has been done. That you did what needed to be done. But you do call us to come follow you, to come be with you, to to make our home with you, to be absolutely transformed by you. That you've torn that veil, that there isn't anything that hinders us from being with you, that you want to be with us every moment, that you did whatever it took on the cross to defeat death, hell, grave, this power of sin in our lives so we could be with you. We could have a relationship with you. We could be redeemed with you. We could be in right standing with you. And all we need to do is just gaze upon your glory, to look upon your face, to see you and allow you to continue to transform us. God, all of us that are here today, we're too busy. Life has our full attention. We have too many things. But you said when we follow you that it'll be easy, it'll be light, and you will help us find rest. So what I'm asking is just right where you're at right now, just ask the Lord to speak to you. What is it the Lord is speaking to you about? On the notes on the back, we have the reflection questions. And again, I encourage you to take them and just put a mark where you see yourself. Doesn't matter really where the mark is, but it's just an honest thing between you and the Lord. Or one of the questions this week, those who know me best would say, I am unhurried, present, and peaceful. Oh, my mark's way further left than I want it to be on that one. But then just take a moment right now and just say, Lord, what are you speaking to me about how I can move that to be more true in my life? What is it God speaking to you? For some of you, he might be saying, you know what, I want you to pull out your calendar right now, and that's totally okay if you do. Some of you just need to pull out your phone and put on your calendar and start thinking before the end of today, where are some places that you're going to put space and put those big rocks in place to say, I'm just gonna be with Jesus a little bit more this week. I'm gonna ink that into my schedule a little bit more. I got a lunchtime. I don't have too much going on before or after that one on this week. Oh, I got some time Thursday night. I don't need to watch a show. I can take 10 minutes just to be with his presence, to ink that in. What is the Lord speaking to you, and what are you going to do with it? I'm going to ask the worship team to just lead us. They're just going to sing, and we're just going to stay seated and just in a meditative, responsive place. That song that we sang that just said, I just want to wait upon your presence. I just want to see your glory. And I just want you to listen to what God is saying to you today.